When you're fired from your job, it's disruptive, it's emotional. But when you get immediately rehired after being fired, that's a whole different emotion. That's you questioning the stability of your job. You're questioning your employer. Thousands of federal workers are experiencing this roller coaster today. Why is this happening? Let's get into it. In March, the Education Department fired 1,300 workers as part of a massive reduction in force. That's nearly half of this entire agency. And why? Because that's the theme this year, and probably for the next 3 years. Millions of dollars were spent to lead the public into believing that the government's incredibly wasteful and inefficient. It's not effective. It doesn't have the public interest in mind. So these cuts that we've been witnessing this year, they've been very aggressive. It's never been seen before. Not during Bill Clinton, not during Ronald Reagan, not during Jimmy Carter. It's never been seen in recent history. The method and the chaotic approach and the complete disregard for civil service protections, but it hit a roadblock recently. On May 22nd, a federal judge slapped a preliminary injunction on the Trump administration, ordering the reinstatement of 1,400 fired workers. This is because cutting half of the workforce could result in irreparable harm to students and educators. Anybody who relies on a federal program like special education or student loans would be in jeopardy. On June 12th, the Education Department's HR chief, Jacqueline, sent an email to these fired folks saying, hey, are you still available? They're trying to figure out who can come back and when. And regardless of your answer, they're stressing this will not impact your employment status. So the message basically says, this information will assist us in understanding potential re-entry timelines. This could also be a check to see if you've moved on. This is a check to see, do you have another job? And if you do, it could be used as a notification of resignation, and you don't want that. You don't want to resign while you're under a RIF notification, because if you resign, you would give up your severance. That would really save the Education Department thousands of dollars if you do that. Now, even if they have, let's say, a sincere intention, they really want to bring you back. Do you want to stay at this point? Because you know your agency doesn't want you there. The leadership of your agency doesn't want you there. The president doesn't want you there. The only reason you would have a job is because of a judge. That's the only reason. And if things go sideways, well, you would quickly lose that job. So the real question is, why stay where you're not wanted? Many of these people, they just want to continue their life. They don't want to worry about the other shoe falling. They just want to be in a job that has some purpose and meaning, and they want to start working, they want to start earning so that they can support their family. That's what they're after. Even if they get reinstated, things will never go back to completely the same again, because what happens when a worker is fired and then quickly rehired? Well, for one, there's confusion and whiplash, anger and resentment, distrust and demoralization, and a loss of loyalty. But of course, it's not just the Education Department dealing with these issues. It's also happening over at the CDC as well. In April, the CDC lost over 2,000 workers in a wave of cuts, which is pretty huge from an agency that's tasked to keep us safe from diseases, workplace safety, and lead poisoning. But on June 11th, 460 of those fired CDC workers, they got reinstatement notices thanks to lawsuits challenging the layoffs. There's a group called Fired But Fighting. It's a group made up of prior CDC employees. And this group, they push out a lot of information about protest, about current events as it relates to CDC. They recently stated countless programs have been cut, which will lead to increased disease and death. The interesting thing is this is not the CDC's first rodeo. This is not the first time this is happening in the CDC. If you look back in February, they had like 180 workers that were rehired after getting termination notices. They received an email and they said, after further review, we decided to let you keep your job. We're sorry. At least they gave an apology that time. They're not really doing that this time. But this really isn't too surprising coming from HHS. HHS is one of the agencies that have really been taking the lead when it comes to disruption and cutting employees and contracts. 25% of their agency, in a snap of a finger, that was it. They were gone. 25% of the agency. And they were the first ones where you had your PIV card to try to get in the building. They went ahead and deactivated that thing. So people had their own personal belongings left in their offices. They couldn't get to it. They had to get escorted by security. That's how they found out. But they never detailed how they would make the layoff decision in the first place, or how the decisions were even made to bring people back. And it's this lack of transparency that has people upset. And it's not just with the HHC or CDC, it's with all federal agencies. It's when you're developing the RIF plan, the massive layoff plan, and you don't let anybody know anything. And you have these secret or top secret meetings where everyone's putting their phone in a basket, they're locking the doors, they're closing the windows, and they're talking about, okay, who do you want to fire next week, Bob? You know, those type of meetings. There's no transparency because they don't want to be disruptive. Well, if what you're doing is with good intention, why not let everyone see how the sausage is made? Why not post daily, bi-daily, weekly, bi-weekly updates so that you can let your workforce know exactly what's coming so they're not taken by surprise? And talking about other agencies, we have other agencies that are doing reinstatements as well. Like, for instance, we have 364 workers from the GSA, 150 from the FDIC, 170 from the Department of Labor, 319 from the Department of Energy, over 700 from the Department of Transportation, and many more. What we're also seeing is federal agencies actively reaching out to federal employees who have already accepted the Deferred Resignation Program, the DRP. They accepted it. They're on admin leave right now, and they're being contacted by their agency saying, hey, would you like your job back? Would you please come on back in here and start contributing again? Now, this is happening for sure at the USDA, the HHS, and the SBA, for sure. Now, it could be happening in other agencies as well. Also with the DRP, we have modifications to the dates in some situations. You sign the document, you agreed to one set of dates, and they're changing the dates on you. And then what we're also seeing, people accepting the Deferred Resignation Program, they're on there for 2 or 3 months, and then the agency offers you the VSIP, the Separation Incentive Program. So let's say you've been on DRP for 3 months. Now they're offering you, let's say, $25,000 to go ahead and drop off their roles, to resign, essentially. So you wouldn't get paid to the end of the fiscal year, or depending on the agency, you wouldn't get paid to the end mark. You would just go ahead and take a VSIP, cash buyout, and that's going to be taxed. You know that's going to be taxed heavily. It's really not $25,000. It's more like between $17,000 and $18,000 if you're lucky. So that's an option some people have been dealing with, and you have to do the math in that situation. So if they're offering you that and you only have like a month or 2 left on DRP, maybe it makes more financial sense. But you have to remember, while you're on DRP, you are accumulating the annual leave. You are accumulating the matching to your TSP. So in a lot of situations, it's better just to ride out the DRP. Okay, now let's look over at the Department of Defense, because they're always cooking up something over there. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wants to rely less on contractors. For IT, management consultant, functions like that, he wants to rely less. Now, if you look at defense contracting, there's over 1 million of them, right? And not only that, we spend about $500 billion paying them. So this is huge. And for the most part, this community of defense contractors, largely politically protected, so it's really interesting seeing him challenge it. Last month, he issued directives requiring any new IT contract over $10 million to get approved from the Deputy Secretary of Defense. This has to be sent up with a cost-benefit analysis. And in addition to that, you have DOGE that's supposed to be reviewing any contract over $1 million, but they only get 2 business days to do it. And if you know anything about contracts, 2 days, that's a tiny window to try to review it. It's probably not going to get done, but we'll have to see how that works out. The Pentagon has been leaning on contractors heavily for over 30 years. You know, Ronald Reagan really introduced it. Ronald Reagan had a lot to do with this reliance on contractors, especially defense contractors. And it's hard for the DoD to hire the right IT talent. When it comes to cybersecurity, the IT folks, it's just a challenge for them. And do you think anybody that has that skill set today, are they eager to join the DoD? Not many people are eager. If you're a student right now in university and you're looking at all your employment opportunities, you're going to go to Google. Why wouldn't you go to Microsoft? Why wouldn't you go to Meta? You would go to one of one of the 10 largest tech companies. That's where you would do your internship. That's where you would try to get a job. You don't want to go to the hotbed right now. It seems like the federal workforce is on fire. You have benefits being threatened. You have jobs being threatened. You have pay being threatened. Everything's under pressure. Everything's under a microscope. You wouldn't, as a parents, if you were the parents to a kid, would you advise them, hey, yeah, Susie Lou, Billy Bob, this is the time. Go ahead and try to get an internship with DOD. Who's doing that? Not in 2025. Yeah, some people might be doing it, but for the most part, I don't think the majority of the students are looking at the federal government. And when it comes to contracting, we saw the same play from President Obama in 2009. Obama's administration tried insourcing to cut contracting costs. What happened? It flopped. It didn't work. And what you will see if you're in a federal agency, let's say you're in downtown DC, usually you have the federal worker and completely separate you have the contractor. They're working on two separate things. Oftentimes, it's like they're in different silos. Now, there's some collaboration, there's some teams that are happening, but what the contractor's working on is usually completely different from what the federal employee is working on. And there are some contractors, let's say in an organization, look at an org chart, and you have an office that's supposed to accomplish a particular function. You have some contractors that impact that whole dynamic, you can't even talk to them. You're not even supposed to pick up the phone and call them because they're subcontracted out by the contractor and there's no direct relationship between you as a civil servant with that contractor. That doesn't even make sense. Also, converting a position, say you have a contractor on your team and you want to explore the possibilities of making it a federal employee position, it could be pricier because you have benefits, you have the TSP matching, you have a lot of things to take into consideration. And even though you're paying 2, 3, 4 times the salary amount to have that contractor there, it could end up being less expensive because you can always cut that employee. You can always cut that contract. The real money is going to the company, and they go ahead and they push over the crumbs to the worker. Now, talking about workers getting crumbs, right now we have people that are on administrative leave. They don't want to lose their job. They didn't accept the deferred resignation program, but they're on admin leave because they're waiting to see what a judge says based on RIFs when it comes to widespread layoffs. That's the only reason they're there. They're somewhat desperate to get back to work, but they're kind of left hanging for the time being. And that's costing the country millions of dollars each and every month. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.